Hello again. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you very much, Liz, for accepting our invitation and coming to discuss PG&E safety in our area of El Sobrante and Richmond. Please go ahead.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me here, and hopefully I'm going to be able to highlight you and give you some information regarding our public safety power shutoff and our wildfire work in the El Sobrante Richmond area, the 94803 zip code in particular. So if you want to go ahead and put the slides up, I'll go ahead and start that presentation, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Does it show?
Yep, there we go.
Okay.
All right, so we can go to the next slide, which is our first slide here, right? Perfect. So this is really an overview of the Richmond El Sobrante area in particular. And the map you're seeing, the colored map, is the CPUC High Fire Threat Danger Map. This is a map that's actually originated from California OES, the utility companies, and Cal Fire developed this using many different criteria to develop what they consider the high fire threat area and the extreme high fire threat area. The yellow area that you see is the second tier 2, or the high fire threat area. And then the red area is the tier 3 high fire threat areas surrounding the 94803 community. Just as a high level overview of the type of work we do in Contra Costa County, we serve roughly 450,000 customers in Contra Costa County. Of that, over 17,000 are in this high fire threat danger area. And then with that, there's a total of 2,200 square miles of 2,200 linear miles of distribution lines, of which 442 of those miles are again in the high fire threat area. And then we have 907 transmission miles, and then of those 430 are in the high fire threat area. Next slide. So what have we been doing over the last year to improve our safety for both wildfires and PSPS and reduce the impact to our customers of PSPS? So a lot of things have been going on since last year. So I'll talk about some of the basic things, and then I'll get in more detail on each one of these so you understand what they are. We've been doing about 180 circuit miles of system hardening throughout our territory, and I'll explain what that means in a bit. We've been doing about 1,800 square miles of circuit work on our vegetation and enhanced vegetation. We have installed 300 weather stations in our PG&E territory and 135 high definition cameras. Those are all.
This is Contra Costa, or which area you're talking about?
This is the entire territory, but then I have a slide on Contra Costa specific as well.
What do you mean entire territory? Entire California?
All of PG&E's territory in California, which encompasses 46 counties.
Thank you.
Yep. And so what have we been doing?
Interested in 94803 because we know there's a big effort going on all over the state. We're just concerned about being left out.
Okay, well, we can go to the next slide and I'll give you specifics about Contra Costa County. And the reality is the 94803 area has very little of this work going on other than the routine vegetation management that we're going to talk about. Some of the enhanced management efforts, and then also some of the work that we have scheduled for in the next few years on hardening in the area. So in Contra Costa County, system hardening wise, we've hardened 15 linear miles of our transmission and distribution lines in that area.
I'm sorry, right? What does that mean? Does it mean like the cables on the streets, or those towers? Or
so yeah, exactly. What I'm going to explain is that means we've installed stronger poles, more resilient poles, so they can hold up to the winds, the higher winds that we get during a PSPS event. We have actually also wrapped some of the wood poles so that they're much more resilient against those winds, stronger cross arms, and in a lot of areas we actually coat the wires. And so what happens during the wind event is that the wires can slap together, creating arcing. And now with the coating on there, that eliminates the arcing as well. So we've been able to do that in these 15 miles of the area within Contra Costa County. Sectionalizing devices, basically those are devices that we install in certain circuits, which allow us to reduce the number of customers that are impacted by a PSPS event. And we have about 39 of these currently installed in Contra Costa County.
I'm sorry, do you want to explain what PSPS is?
Public safety power shutoff. That's when we shut off the electricity because of the extreme weather conditions that are anticipated in advance of that. Yeah. Community resource centers. These are resource centers open to the public. When we actually have an event, we stage up these resource centers to provide everything from cooling to refreshments to generation to charge your devices and medical devices as well. We have, as I mentioned, 33 weather stations, and this allows us to see the.
I'm sorry, before you leave the community resource centers, are there any in zip code 94803?
We have several in the Richmond area. We do not have any in El Sobrante per se, but we work with Genevieve from the emergency management manager of Richmond, City of Richmond. Worked with her to identify, I believe it's 3 locations in the Richmond area that we can establish.
So Richmond's pretty big.
Yeah.
Are any of those in 94803?
Again, we don't work by zip code. So when you say 94803, I just have to assume it's that El Sobrante Richmond area. I've actually lived in that area for most of my early childhood and into my 20s. But so I don't recall having any in that particular area. So in the in the Dianza High School area, nothing in that area. The closest I believe is in the downtown Richmond area.
Can we request for one?
Well, the reality is we only put those up in areas that are directly impacted by PSPS events. And historically, last year and the year before, the El Sobrante Richmond area was not impacted by the PSPS events. So yes, we could put one there if for some reason the weather dictated that you were going to be impacted. We have what we call outdoor facilities. We have a outside contractor that we hired, and they can put these up in parking lots and so forth. So it's a quick fix if we need to move those around from one location to the other.
Thank you, and sorry for interruptions.
Yeah, no problem. No, I'm happy to answer the questions as we go along. I'd rather do that actually, so that's fine.
Les,
yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to interrupt you just to say that historically we were definitely impacted by the public safety power shutoffs, especially in 2019. We were down for a day and a half with no power. So
yeah, the original initial power shutoffs in 2019 affected some of the Richmond areas, in particular El Cerrito and the foothills there. 2020, we did not have any impact in that area, and that's because of some of the sectionalizing devices that we've installed, as well as some of the work we've done to reduce the number of circuits in that area that would typically be impacted by a wind event. So I'll be honest with you, the reality is because you're in a tier 1 location for the most part in 94803, you're probably not going to be impacted by a PSPS event from here on out.
So I think most of 94803 is in a very high fire severity zone.
Well, if you scroll to the next map, go ahead and go to the next slide. You'll see this is the El Sobrante, basically the 94803 area. And to your point, anything west of San Pablo in the Tilden Park region, that is a high fire threat tier 3 area. And then if you go from Kennedy Grove into the Briones area, that's a tier 2 area. Everything in the immediate El Sobrante area, in the Richmond area, including Appian Way and all those areas, are not in a high fire threat area. They're in a tier 1 location.
Have those been reclassified recently?
Nope, these are have been established. It's not a PG&E description. This is established by, again, CAL FIRE, Cal OES in the state of California. And you can look at the overall map showing the tier 2, tier 3 areas. I believe it's the CPUC web area. Yeah, cpuc.ca.gov/fire threat maps. And it'll show you much more detail than I can here on a slide where the high fire threat area is affecting your neighborhoods.
So let me make something clear. You said because we are tier 1, meaning very high fire danger
No, the
area.
other way.
No, it's the opposite. Tier 1 is low
Got it.
fire risk and tier 3 is the highest extreme fire risk.
Okay, I thought in the first slide you showed we were 2 and 3.
You do have some 2 and 3, but again, not in the, like May Road, Appian Way, the residential areas, those are in tier 1 areas. The only areas that are in tier 2 are the areas that are east of, I'm trying to think of the name of the street. I can bring it up here.
San Pablo Dam Road?
No, west of San Pablo Dam Road is tier 3. That would be your Tilden Park, you know, the foothills in that area. And then your Kennedy Grove area where you go into the Briones Reservoir area, that's also tier 2. And that's Castro Valley Road and east of Castro Valley Road in that location right there. So as you can see from the map, that the majority of El Sobrante itself per se and the outlying unincorporated areas of Richmond are in a tier 1 area. And that's pretty important because we focus our work in the tier 2, tier 3 areas right now based on the high fire threat danger.
When you said Castro Valley Road, are you talking about Castro
Castro
Ranch Road? Because that's
Oh,
where,
thank you. Yeah, Castro Ranch.
that's where a lot of, at least I and my neighbors live right near Castro Ranch Road. And like I said, we were strongly affected by some of the shutoffs and our communications were out. So I'm assuming that those are still included in the areas that are subject to PSPS.
Yes, so anything east of Castro Ranch Road is still potentially going to be affected by a PSPS event. Not as many homes in that area, obviously, as west of Castro Ranch Road. With that being said, each event is different. And the 2 events we had in October of last year, to my knowledge, and I just looked at the report, did not affect anything in the West County area, West Contra Costa County area.
Les, I'd like to ask you a question, Les.
Yes.
This is Robert Zucker. I live on La Colina Road, and the area east of La Colina Road, between our house and the Waldorf School, is all heavily overgrown. There's eucalyptus trees. It's all sorts of fire danger. And I'm not sure if I'm seeing that as being, that it seems like we live in a very high fire danger zone. And I'm not sure you're reflecting that.
So without having a more detailed map of the fire threat zones available here in front of us, it's hard for me to pick out those locations and where you're at. I mean,
Right.
it would be good for you to look at the CPUC website that shows those and focus in on where your address is, and you can see if you're actually in what they consider a tier 2 or tier 3 area. You know, heavy vegetation in a residential area it is one thing, but when it starts to be bordered by large heavy timbers and a lot of dry fuels, they take a lot of things other than just vegetation into consideration. The terrain, the uphill grade, the 10-year weather forecast for the area. There's a lot of other things that are considered. So just having heavy vegetation doesn't necessarily put you in a tier 2 or tier 3 area.
And the website is cpuc.org? Or?
No.
At some point you can put it in the chat section after your presentation, please.
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Liz, I have a quick question. The reason why we met was when we were asking questions about the very high voltage PG&E towers.
Yes,
Castro Ranch Road in the highly vegetated area.
Right, that's our Oleum #1 high voltage transmission lines.
Right, and we hope we get back to this after your presentation and discuss that more. Go ahead, please.
Absolutely. We can go to the next slide. So there's a lot of reasons that you may lose power, and PSPS is one of those reasons, and we discussed that a little bit. We'll get into some more details on that as well. We also could turn off electricity because of rotating outages, or what's basically known as brownouts. This is not a PG&E decision. This is made by Casio, which is the state operator that operates the electric grid on the West Coast. And so you would typically see these types of outages. We did have those last summer at high heat, continuous heat, and where a lot of electricity is being used, not only in California, but in multiple states, which draws down heavily on the overall electric grid. So again, that's not a PG&E controlled. We get very little notice when this happens. Typically, it's less than 30 minutes. And as soon as we get the notice, we start to make notifications to our customers of these brownouts, both in the media as well as via our typical social media and news outlets. And then we have emergency repairs. Obviously, if a car hits a pole, that's an emergency repair. You could have an outage locally be based on that. That can take anywhere from a few hours to a couple of days to make repairs and get the electricity back on. Planned maintenance. If we're doing any maintenance to upgrade the system or do any of the hardening that we just mentioned, you would get a 10-day notice, both in a email form and a mail form, and a flyer on your door stating that we're going to be shutting off power for a period of time to make the necessary planned maintenance on the system. Obviously, active wildfires, this is for safety for the firefighters and first responders. We would shut off the wires, electricity in that area, which could affect the neighborhoods that are in and around the wildfire area. And then once again, the public safety shut off. So these are all potential reasons you would lose your electricity. Next slide. So focusing on public safety power shutoff. And some of you may not know what that is, and you kind of asked what that was. When we have high winds, basically we start looking at the potential for shutting off the electricity to prevent a wildfire. This is something that's been going on for about 15 years in Southern California. So it's not new to California, it's new to PG&E, meaning it's something that we started about 2 years ago to obviously reduce the impact or potential for fire situations. Next slide. So the reasons, the weather events that we typically look at where we start making decisions to shut off electricity for a PSPS would be low humidity levels, anything below 30%. Typically, the humidity would be in the low teens. We'd be at high winds, continuous winds at 20 miles per hour with gusts anywhere from 30 to 40 miles per hour. Last weekend, we had 55 and 60 mile per hour winds, but we didn't have the low humidity levels that we would see in a PSPS event. Red flag warning is also another indicator for a PSPS event. And then obviously dry conditions as the summer continues on and we don't have any more rain, we get low moisture content in the vegetation, which increases the fire risk and the potential for fire spread, quick, rapid fire spread. And so all of these conditions basically would lead to us making the decisions to shut off electricity proactively prior to this type of weather. Next slide. Notifications for PSPS. We will send out notifications 48 hours in advance. So as soon as we see the weather, we start planning for it. We send out notifications 48 hours, and that notification would be a text message, an email, and or a phone call, depending how you've signed up for your messaging on the PG&E app and or website. And then we would give you continuous information at, again, 24 hours, and then just before the event starts, and then continuously during the event. And then once electricity is restored, we'd also notify you of the restoration on that. One of the new features for this year in our website is, even if it's not your resident, if say it's your home or your childcare facility or your school, you can put those addresses into that website, and it will tell you whether or not that address will be impacted by the upcoming potential for a PSPS situation. Next slide. A lot of stuff here. I don't know that we need to go into a lot of this here in this meeting. I know you want to get to a lot of the other questions and concerns you have locally here, but these are a lot of the things that we've done and partnered within Contra Costa County to help everything from our senior citizen-based communities, our medical baseline communities, our homeless populations. We work with the community-based organizations, a large number of them. You can see them listed here on the right side of the screen. We also work with Meals on Wheels and the food bank to provide food restoration if you have lost food during a PSPS event or need for food during that event. And then there's a number of other things that we do, including medical baseline battery backup for your medical equipment. We can provide those batteries for you, and that way you have spares for charged devices such as your CPAP unit or your oxygen unit or those types of things. Next slide. These are all different web links that will provide additional very detailed information about all the programs that we have available to our customers. And so everything from, as I mentioned, the address alerts that you can put in there, to our weather information, to how to apply for rebates for a generator if you're in a high fire threat danger area and you're on well water. Very specific details that are required for that. We have everything is in 16 different languages, so for people who are unable to speak English. And then again, just additional things for you to look at as you have these slides. Again, you can send this to everybody if you'd like, and feel free to check into these websites.
I will share the links.
Okay. The next, go ahead, and not this one, but down to the next one. So I wanted to talk about vegetation in a little bit more detail. So it's
Excuse me, Les.
Yes, sir.
This is Robert again. I just wanted to let everybody know, I just found the CPUC fire map, and the area behind La Colina Road in our neighborhood, this 94803 area, is classified as Tier 3 extreme. So it's pretty serious here.
Good, and that's great to know. I'm not saying that there aren't parts of 94803 that are not in the Tier 2, Tier 3. The majority of the residential areas in the Tier 1. With that detail, those are some of the things that you need to understand as far as preparing your home, having defensible space, and those types of things that the fire department recommends for wildfire season.
So we don't want you to think that we haven't done any work. So Hala's done extensive work, both with the Board of Supervisors in Contra Costa County and a group that's working on the WUI and ways to have the community harden their houses. So
great.
We actually have learned a whole lot about fire in the last year. Mm-hmm. Probably just enough to make us nervous that you think we're all Tier 1.
No,
I'm not worried about the electricity going out. I'm worried about my house burning down.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I was a firefighter for 35 years and saw everything you can imagine. So I know people are more prepared than ever. And PSPS is just one issue that comes with the summertime. But the vegetation is always a concern, and I'm thankful that you guys are proactive in keeping your community safe. What I wanted to mention.
Sorry for interruption. Our concern is that some of us are not in Tier 1, but we are right next to Tier 1, very high fire. If there is a fire, it's not going to stop at the border where the map draws the line or different colors.
Right.
We're all going to be caught by wildfire. That's very concerning for us. Right.
Well, unfortunately, the way California is with the wildland urban interface in these Tier 2, Tier 3 areas, it is a high risk. And I think the last year's fire season and the potential for this year's fire season really exasperates the need to do something and be better prepared. With that being said, PG&E is doing a lot of work to help reduce the impact of our system creating a wildfire. We talked about the hardening, our vegetation management. We are heavily managing the vegetation on an annual basis and continuous basis around our distribution and transmission lines. And so I just want to let you know to date that all of our electrical lines in your 94803 area, the vegetation has been completed, all the management that we're required to do. And actually we've gone beyond that requirement and enhanced that vegetation management in a lot of the areas in your area as well.
Sorry.
That's all right. We're pretty much done with the slides. So I wanted to open up the conversation for some of the other questions that you had sent me, and for anything else that anybody might have. So I'll start with someone had sent a question regarding cell tower impact during a PSPS event, and I'm being unable to use their cell phone. And so that was identified early on in 2019 that the cell phone companies were at risk, that they were not prepared for extended outages. And so with that, we've worked extensively with all the telecommunication companies. They now have battery backup at all of their cell sites. And in most cases, they have generator backup as well, so they can go well into an extended outage at these locations. So we rely on them to maintain and be proactive in being for a potential PSPS event. And once again, we work with them and continue to work with them to make sure that that cell towers continue to work. It's not only for our customers, but also for 911, for all the emergency response as well. And so it's a critical part of our PSPS is that we work with them hand in hand and that they're ready for this, as well as with the water companies, the sewer waste companies as well. We have open dialogue relationships with them on a continuous basis. The other question, one of the questions we had was, somebody had said something about they had tried to utilize the "Don't Sell My Information" part of our website, and when they did that, it caused them to not be able to see the maps. So we've tried to duplicate that. Apparently, they haven't been able to figure out what that issue is. We would need more information on what type of browser they were on and what type of device they were on.
That
and
was
go ahead.
Hi, sorry to interrupt you. That was me. And when you opt out, you're given a choice of what cookies to get rid of. And I left all of the functionality cookies and got rid of all the marketing social media cookies. That's on your website. When I did that, and I'm on an iPad, everything went away. I could no longer see.
What browser were you using? Google Chrome? That's the preferred browser for all of our links.
I'm on Safari.
Yeah, and that may be part of the problem is our system does not work well on some of the other browsers, and they recommend using Google Chrome. So if you could try that on Google Chrome and see if it helps. If it doesn't, I'm happy to give you my email so I can get more detailed information about what occurred, how it occurred, and we have our IT people taking a look at that.
Okay.
That shouldn't happen. You should have access to the maps regardless of you opting out of the "Don't Sell My Information."
I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I think
Unless-
those were
Talking about your email address, somebody's asking, who do we contact if you want to report a power line that does not meet PG&E's vegetation management guidelines? What is the contact info for PG&E?
So you would contact PGE 5000, and that's
Is that a
our
phone number?
Yeah, that's our phone number, PGE 5000, 1-800-PGE 5000. And that person would direct you to the right persons to take the information so we can go out and check out that line. We actually are developing an app, and they're saying it's in a pilot stage. It should be up and running sometime before the end of the summer, which allows you to actually on that app put in the information directly to PG&E, to our vegetation management teams, so that they can get that immediately and respond and handle that accordingly.
Very good.
I have a follow-up question to that, Sohaila.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you repeat what those standards are? We have I don't think it's a high power voltage line in our neighborhood, but it's like the second one down in that tiering. So
Yeah.
what, and it has been overgrown. I haven't checked recently.
That's a great question. So Hila, can you bring up the presentation, the last slide, which is the
Yes.
wires that we had? Again, I apologize not
Can
being
you
able
see
to.
it?
Yeah, I see it. That's perfect. All the way to the end. There you go. So regarding what vegetation management looks like, it's based, first of all, on which tier the line is in. If it's in a tier 1, well, let me explain. You see the different wires here. The highest wire on the pole, the distribution primary line, that's the higher voltage line. Those are energized. The second wires on the second level are the secondary lines. Those are basically 420 volts. And those obviously have electricity in them as well. The lower line is communication lines. Those are not our lines. Those belong to telecommunication companies. So there's no vegetation management restraints on those lines. The trees can be touching, going through those lines, and there's no issues because they're not energized lines. On our transmission lines, it's higher voltage. Obviously, we have right of way on both sides of those, and we maintain up to 30 feet distance from the transmission lines. A lot of it also has to do with the type of trees. So we would come in a tier 1 area, we would maintain a minimum of 18 inches from the where the wire crosses over the top of the pole. That's called the conductor. And the crossbar there, we would keep a minimum of 18 inches of vegetation clearance on a tier 1 area. When we get to tier 2 and tier 3, that dramatically changes. It goes from 4 feet to 12 feet, depending on the type of trees, how quickly the trees will grow throughout the growth season, and whether the trees are dead, dying, and or diseased trees. And so there's a lot of variables that come into play in this. So just to be clear, we do not manage vegetation below that second crossbar. And every pole is a little bit different. They may not even have a second crossbar, but at those wires that are considered communication wires, the vegetation is not managed because there's no ignition potential from those wires. There's no electricity in them. The service drop you see coming from the pole to your house, that's actually a wire that you own. We do connect it. It's energized with our wire from the pole. However, you are responsible as a homeowner to maintain vegetation clearance around that service drop. So if a tree is up against it or falls over it, you pay for the repairs to that service drop and or maintaining the vegetation in the area. If you need to maintain the vegetation, we will come out for no charge, de-energize that service drop so you can do the work necessary under safety conditions. And then once the work is complete, we'll re-energize it at no cost.
Liz, if that service drop is sagging too low, who's responsible for fixing it?
That would be the responsibility of, first of all, the homeowner should notify us. And they do sag. That's part of the way they're designed to take the give some slack for wind and other things. So when you say too low, I don't know what the current mandate is on the distance from ground. I could find out for you, but I think it's 10 feet, but I have to confirm that.
So if that's an issue, who's in charge? Who's responsible for that?
Yeah, same number, 1-800 PGE 5000. Let them know that you have a service drop you're concerned about being too low and too low to the ground and in danger of for someone getting injured, and we'll send a crew out to take a look at it and make adjustments.
Thank you. And that distribution primary lines, what is the voltage on those?
Anywhere from 4 to 21,000 volts at the higher line, the primary line, and the secondary ranges from 120 to 420 volts.
Wow, 4 to 20,000 volts. So how far away should the vegetation be from those lines?
Again, in a tier 1 area, it'll be 18 inches. In a tier 2 or tier 3 area, it will range between 4 feet and 12 feet, depending on the type of vegetation in the area. And this is done annually, and actually, in some cases, it's done multiple times during the year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does that clear up the question on the vegetation around the lines?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Actually, I'm more concerned about the vegetation around transmission lines in the park area. There are trees around them, and it's a tier 3, that area.
Mm-hmm.
It is right by like just a few feet. How do we know if PG&E looks at them or takes care of them? I understand you're saying you're visiting them every year, but
Yeah, so those transmission lines, I have it right here. They were last inspected in July of 2020, and they're due to be inspected again of this July in 2021. And they've been inspected, and the work has been done every year about that same time frame, anywhere from, looks to be from June to September, depending on our workload.
is it possible that one of the residents could go along when they're visiting it?
No, probably not. That's not something we do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody has more questions about this slide, or should I stop share? Okay.
Any other questions?
I
I
just
had-
put a long question in the chat, but somebody else has a question. Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead, you
I
can
have-
ask your question that was in the chat, and then
I have
after
not-
you, I see a hand, Rena will ask her question after you. Go ahead, Patty.
Okay, thank you. So PG&E just submitted an update to the CPUC on their request,
Yeah.
at their request regarding anticipated impacts. So,
Right.
and Contra Costa shows increases in the duration and size and number of customers being impacted. Can you talk about that in relation to our zip code?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're probably the entire process is called the tree overstrike potential, and this came through Judge Elfett, who recommended. It was not an order; it was a recommendation to PG&E that we look at large trees in and around our transmission lines and distribution lines, for that matter, that could potentially fall into our lines, causing a wildfire. And so, even though he did not order that for us to take this on, PG&E has decided to go ahead and make the changes in our PSPS events based on what we call tree overstrike potential. So if there are large trees in and around our transmission lines outside of the normal vegetation area, that now puts that circuit at risk to be shut off during a PSPS event. So what does that mean to, and I'll just, again, general terms for Contra Costa County, which includes your zip code 94803, the number of events after looking at 10 years of weather data and potential PSPS data, the number of events for PSPS in Contra Costa will not change. It's going to stay at 2. That's the average we're looking at. Now, again, every year is different. So there's potential that it could be 3. It could be 1 or none. It just depends on each year. That's the prediction, that the change will not occur in the number of events. However, because we would probably include several more circuits within Contra Costa County, we're looking at increasing the number of customers that might be impacted. And that was the, I have to look at the percent that you just gave me, 108% increase. So we would go from 1,338 customers to 2,783 customers. And so that would be the impact for the number of customers predicted. The duration would also increase by 24%. What that means is instead of the typical 12.9 hours of outage for a PSPS event, we are now looking at potentially 16 hours for an average outage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does that apply across the entire county? I mean, is East and West County considered?
Yes, it applies. When they did the predictions and they did all the put all the data into the computer, basically it did it for the whole county. We don't narrow it down per city or county or district or town or that. It's just way too much work. So we put that information out in general terms to the county.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Rena or Rina? Sorry, you're
Oh,
next.
it's okay. It's Rena.
Thank you, Rena.
I live parallel to Clark Road, which ends at the trail up to Wildcat Canyon and all that area.
Mm-hmm.
And Clark Road, I believe, has several PG&E poles on the way up. I remember in the 89 earthquake, it was a sparking wire. So anyway, here's my real question, and just to give you a sense. What does one do for a situation where the property that is behind mine has ground fuel like a well-built campfire, only huge, because there's so many dead trees that have dropped limbs, and full trees are just dry, big trunks. It would only take a few blades of grass for things to travel very quickly. So I don't know what to do about this, since that is private land. So it's not the city's land. How does, besides talking to the person who's not going to remove all that, they can't afford it, what does one do?
So great question. It's not a PG&E question, so I'm going to put my firefighter hat on and tell you I have a very good relationship with the fire marshal for the city of Richmond, Eric Govan, and that would be their responsibility. What basically happens is on an annual basis, the fire marshal will send out an inspection team to check all properties, all city-owned properties, all privately owned properties for their vegetation management. And there are strict guidelines that the vegetation has to fall under. If they don't meet the guidelines, then the owner of that property, they use city documents to determine who that is, they will get a notice to abate. And they are given, basically the first notice, they're given 30 days to abate that property at their cost. Within the 30 days, if they do not abate, they'll get a second notice. Then they're given 2 more weeks. At the end of those 2 weeks, they'll get a third notice, which includes a letter that says the city of Richmond will abate the property, and they will send the bill to the property owner. So it's the property owner's responsibility. And so for your part, if you have a property that you're very concerned about, I highly recommend you call the Richmond Fire Department, speak to the fire marshal and or his designee, and he'll be able to take the information about the property, and they'll send an inspection crew out to make sure that they've captured that property in their inspection process.
Okay, that's a great idea. What I know is this person who bought the property that includes a house on it further down didn't know he owned all that when he bought it. He did. When I called to tell him, he said, no, I don't own all that. Yes, he does. And he looked up the records. It would cost $50,000 minimal to remove that stuff. It's a very slanted area. So I feel kind of bad setting up that, but it is a fire hazard for a whole strip of houses.
Yeah, that's a small amount compared to the damage that a major fire could do.
Exactly.
Using that for fuel. So the fire department is your resource for that.
Okay.
They'll take that seriously, and so I would recommend you do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to add that actually Fire Marshal Govan recently said that they do have the budget to take care of one such case and ask for people to provide information. Provide the information. It may be a bit too late, but I'll pass it to them maybe this year or next year. It might qualify if it's a fire danger, but they're unable financially to take care of it. The city will take care of it.
Okay, I will call. Thank you.
And one of these days we'll have Fire Marshal Govan to talk about home hardening again and other issues, hopefully.
It's a great
And
resource.
just consider yourself lucky you don't live in unincorporated county.
I do.
Oh, that's
I
different. The
actually
city
do.
of Richmond won't talk to you at all.
Because the city of Richmond is on the other side of the gulch. I know it's a real, well, I didn't know they wouldn't talk about it, but Clark Road is the city of Richmond. And the street I'm on, which is just, I don't know how many feet, couple of 100 feet, is unincorporated. So does this mean I can still use the city of Richmond Fire Department, because that property that's a problem is in the city of Richmond.
Oh,
It's not my property, but it belongs to someone who's in the city of Richmond. They just happen to be across the creek from us. So that'll work.
Try.
Right.
Okay.
And if it's unincorporated area, you can always request the same resource through the Contra Costa County Fire Department.
Okay, But I
And
know
by the
it's-
way, Liz, now you see why we talk about 94803, because it's like puzzle pieces of
Oh, it's
unincorporated
crazy.
and
Things
the
are-
city of Richmond.
Oh.
Yeah,
Well,
very
I
confusing.
went to De Anza High School. I lived in Hilltop Green, and so I'm very familiar with that area. I have relatives in the area still, so you're speaking about an area I'm comfortable with.
Okay. Have you answered all the questions I had?
Yes, thank you
before?
very much.
Oh, thank you, Rena.
Yeah, I believe I've answered the ones you sent me. So I don't have anything else unless you have more questions for me.
I have one, but let's hear from Pam first. Go ahead, Pam, please.
So I know it's hard to always know what's really going on with the winds. Last year, my hill, I'm up where Adachi Nursery used to be, I'm up at the top of that hill, was evacuated. And I took the evacuation, as I think a lot of neighbors did. And it was sort of unnecessary because the extreme winds that were predicted didn't happen. That's not PG&E's fault. But I guess my question is, how seriously do we have to take these evacuations? Because they're quite costly to do, and especially when nothing's happening.
Yeah, and again, that's not a PG&E question, but I will just tell you that I would take all evacuation warnings and orders seriously. The problem is if you don't take them seriously and the threat becomes more extreme, then you risk getting caught in whatever situation is creating that evacuation. And again, these are great questions to bring to your local fire agency. I know at the county level, they're working on a new, brand new program that they are in a pilot study for evacuations within all of Contra Costa. They're setting up zones. And you'll be given a zone number, and when your zone is identified as an evacuation area, you'll get notifications that zone 21 needs to evacuate, whatever that means. And so they're all very aware of it. But when you get an order to evacuate, I have to say, I've been in extreme fire conditions. The fire moves much faster than you're able to drive away from. So I would take that seriously. Be prepared. Have your go bag, have your important things ready to go during the fire season. And if need be, you throw it in the car and take off. And you know, last year's fire conditions, people evacuated multiple times throughout fire season. So take it seriously. Yeah.
Thank you.
I had one question about a pole that was falling over on May Road the other day. The power went out, and normally we get notification. I have an old school landline so that we have a phone when there's power outage. Usually we get notifications. We did not receive one, and we were not alone in that. I noticed on Nextdoor. Power was restored. Usually we get a notification. We did not. And then when they were fixing it, you know, they switched the power back on, so they had to turn it off for a bit. No notification. But when it came on again, we did get a notification. So being a block away from a downed power line, it was a little concerning.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Obviously, that would be concerning to me as well. I'm not sure for that particular incident what occurred and why you wouldn't have gotten a notice. So I would first recommend that you double check on our website that you have correct information in there and that you are getting those notifications. Either, do you have a cell phone?
I do, but we set it up on our landline.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. The way
We
the
did.
landline system is, I would suggest you have it set up on your cell phone. And
Well, my
use that.
husband is set up for text on his cell phone. He didn't get them either. So.
Yeah, and I'd have to do some research to find out why you wouldn't have gotten that. It might have been something on our part. It might have. I'm just not sure. I haven't had a chance to investigate that. Feel free to give me more details, date, time, location again, and I'll do the research to figure out what happened on that.
All right, wasn't just me. I mean, on
Sure.
next, there was a lot of chitter chatter about why didn't we get notified that this
Yeah.
I mean, the police shut the road down, and
Yeah, absolutely. If I have more details, I can do the research. I can check on our outage information to see how many people were out and if notifications went out, and if not, why not.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
I would like to quickly answer Marianne's question, and then I have two questions for you, Les. Marianne
Okay.
says, what to do if fire marshal in Richmond does not respond to reports of vegetation and fire dangers? Please CC me in your emails. We have a very good relationship with the fire department, even though we don't have a fire chief yet, but we are in a good relationship, and I will follow up for you. They usually respond to 94803 Emergency Preparedness Alliance. And about the map, I'm going to send it by email to all the community members. So, you know, you can look at the map, see where you are with respect to the fire hazard areas. I have two questions for you, Liz. One is about the fire. I sent you the fire report. There was
Right.
a fire caused on Olinda Road by a PG&E transformer.
Yeah, so the address is 5771 Olinda Road. I pulled up both the fire report you had, and I contacted Eric Govan to get additional information, and then I pulled up the PG&E report. So that fire actually was originated as a vehicle fire, which burned the service wire down onto the ground from the house, causing the vegetation to get catch fire from the wire once the vehicle fire impacted the wire itself. We have records of a claim to PG&E for $204 for a car seat. However, the homeowner's insurance paid them roughly $22,500 to replace their vehicle because the vehicle created the fire. And so that was not a PG&E caused fire, just so we're clear about
There are
that.
two fires there. Is this the fire involving the transformer?
That's the fire that involved the outage with the wire down at 5771 Olinda Drive. There was a subsequent fire next door in the eaves of the house, and according to the fire report, that was an extension of the original fire that had gotten into the eaves. They came back, what we call a rekindle, and extinguished that fire. There was not PG&E related as well.
Okay, thank you. The other question is that some communities have cameras over the high voltage towers in tier 3 areas. Is PG&E planning to have those cameras, please, in that park area where there is high vegetation and high voltage towers?
So we have, as I mentioned earlier in the slides, we have 33 cameras in Contra Costa, which cover, we have them on Mount Diablo. We can see basically all of Contra Costa County. We have them in multiple locations. You can actually look.
Mount Diablo is too far from here.
I understand that. We have them. We have cameras closer to you as well. And so you can go onto alert. I'll have to find the website. Alert. I'll have to email you the website where you can see the cameras. You can actually look at all the locations we have the cameras. With that being said, if you have an area that you're concerned about where you might think a camera would be beneficial, let me know. I'll work with the fire department. I'll work with PG&E and our team, because we do finance those cameras. And we're always looking for another place to put a camera to give us better visibility on the wildfire threat areas.
Let me tell you right now, one location is around La Colina, where the homeless people go into that green area and start fire for cooking or whatever reason.
Right.
We are very concerned about that. And one area is here at Castro Ranch Road, where there's high voltage towers and lots of vegetation around it.
Yeah, we actually may have cameras that are seeing into that area. I'd have to look at them to determine if we have something in that area. But again, if we don't, I'm happy to solicit the idea of providing another camera around that high voltage area to give everybody a better look at that.
Are these the cameras that are installed by Contra Costa Fire Department, or it's separate, it's PG&E's?
No, the majority are installed by PG&E.
Okay.
And we finance it, we install them, and then there are some that are installed by CAL FIRE. And then in some locations, like I know Moraga Orinda Fire Department has at least one camera that they installed in their jurisdiction. So it depends on, we work cooperatively with multiple agencies to get the best view. And these agencies all have the ability to use these cameras to determine where a fire is starting and, get the right resources to that location as quickly as possible.
Are all
Thank
these
you.
cameras viewable from one website? Are they all
They-
accessible?
They are. You know what? If you give me a second, I can find the website name for you here. I've got it in my notes. I just got to find it. Here we go.
It's a great website.
Yeah, it's where is it at here? Wildfire.org.
Thank you.
Yep. And there's hundreds of cameras throughout the state. In fact, throughout the West Coast. You can look at them all day long if you'd like.
And I have.
They're great. They're great resource. Yeah, get some good weather information as well.
Wonderful, good to know. So on that website, we see the actual camera, what the camera see, or are we able to see their locations too?
You will see the locations as well. The only
Okay.
thing you can't do that we can do is manipulate the cameras to move them 360 degrees to pan wherever we want. Just so you know, if the camera identifies through infrared that there is a fire, it will focus in on that fire, and then you can look specifically at that location.
Okay, I'm just curious on the side, does PG&E use drones to watch?
We do. Yeah, we use drones for everything from vegetation management to inspecting our wires to just inspecting our gas lines, everything. So we use quite a bit of drones.
Is there a major gas line running through 94803?
No, there isn't. The closest lines you have, if I can recall, would be along Highway 80 and along you begin going through to the refineries and that Chevron refinery as well. And then nothing, no transmission gas lines in your area.
Okay, and also I would like to know, after all the major fires caused by PG&E, how much has the safety budget of PG&E increased? Has it?
I wish I could answer. I don't know. I know that we are spending billions of dollars on safety and upgrading everything from our Wildfire Safety Center to the management that we just talked about, and all those things. I don't have a number. That's actually a great question. I'd love to know myself. So I'll ask that question and let you know.
Okay, and we also have a question in the chat. Who's watching those cameras you just talked about? Is PG&E watching?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So PG&E, we in San Francisco, we have what we call Wildfire Operations Center. Operates 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and we have up to 7 staff members that are continually watching all of our cameras, all of the weather stations. They are monitoring the fire channels and determining when we have potential for fire. And we not only send resources for PG&E to those locations while using that, what we call it a WSOC, Wildfire Operations Center, but we also can monitor the weather, and then they start to develop the PSPS criteria based on the information that comes through. It's an all hazard operational center for us within our PG&E territory.
Thank you. And could you tell us a brief guideline? If you want a camera, what is the procedure? Do we just email you, or do we need to document? Do we need to?
No, so again, no guarantees. We have to determine whether the camera is useful in a lot of different ways, not only to PG&E, but to other agencies. But just tell us an area, email me with an area that you think would be beneficial for a camera. So the first thing, I would determine whether we have cameras that are actually able to view that location, which means we don't need to add another one. If we didn't and it worked, we would send a crew out to investigate and determine a good location to put a camera, and then we'd install it. It's not a lengthy process at all.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Pam, I see your hand is up, and Jean, your hand. I don't know if it's from the past or you just raised your hand.
No, I just put it up again. What I was going to ask, first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Putnam, for your great answers and being here. It's just fabulous. It occurred to me with these cameras that even though you have a staff of 7, if we as kind of citizens, and hopefully there's hundreds of thousands of citizens, could be more alerted to where these cameras are and just watch haphazardly, but they find something that they have a place they could say, hey, there's a spark here, because maybe the 7 people are too busy to notice it. Is that possible?
No, it actually isn't. Again, a lot of the information, what the camera does is private and confidential. And so the general public would not be able to report on anything on the cameras. It's not just PG&E that's watching the cameras. CAL FIRE is watching the cameras. Your local fire departments have the ability to watch the cameras. And there's a lot of other tools that go into finding a fire in the incipient stage. We have satellites.
But we don't have a problem with not enough people watching the cameras.
No,
Okay.
not by any means.
Okay.
I
Okay.
pretty much watch the cameras in Contra Costa on a daily basis. So there are a number of ways that we are monitoring for fire hazards throughout the area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Jean, you had a question, go ahead.
So I'm looking at the map now and I see our area, absolutely, but I don't see anything that indicates cameras. What do they look like when they're on the map?
Which map are you looking at?
Alertwildfire.org.
Okay, so when you bring that up in the upper right-hand corner, there's looks like about 4 bars.
Oh, yeah.
You click on that and then it'll list all the different areas, general regions where the cameras are. You want to look at the East Bay, I believe, or South Bay camems. And when you
It's
click
North
on
Bay.
that,
Ours are the North Bay ones.
North Bay, or yeah, there's a combination there. So if you click on that, you'll get in the general area, and at the upper part of your screen, you'll see where there's on the left side, you'll see an actual camera view of whatever camera comes up first, and on the right side, you'll see the different cameras in the location. You can open up that screen and actually count how many cameras and see where they're located on that screen as well.
Got it.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
pretty intuitive. You can play around with it and get a really good picture of where things are.
It's a great website.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Could I get your email?
Yes, my email is L like Larry, R as in Robert, P as in Paul, the number 0 at pge.com.
Can I share it with my mailing list?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I second the thank you very much. This was great.
Yes, very informative. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. We learned a lot. I'm going to share those links, your email address, the cameras. Very informative, actually, more than I expected, I have to confess. I thought we would just complain too and you would defend PG&E, but honestly, it was more than that.
Well, I have to apologize it's taken this long. We are super busy. I'm inundated with the same requests for every city, every location. So it's been taking a bit to get all the information. But I think this is a great conversation. I think it's something that, I'm happy to do and to be candid with what I think, we can do better at and what the community can help us at. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement on both areas, and it's a team effort. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
Thank you so much. If there is any special safety measure taken in 94803, please let us know. We'll have you over again. And we hope to see you again next year and get updated on how things are going and how safe PG&E is in this area.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time and inviting me out
Thank you.
to join you this evening.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
All
Thank
right.
you, Les. Very good.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You
Thank
too.
you
And
too.
thanks
Bye.
Diana.